Joe Pardavila. This is the Forbes Books Podcast, and for most of us folks that enjoy a cocktail from time to time, we have no idea what it takes to make it big in the wine and spirits industry. And when I say we have no idea, we literally have no idea. We always hear about the likes of George Clooney and Ryan Reynolds raking it in with their spirits brands, but this week I want to tell you about a trailblazing entrepreneur by the name of Nicole Young. Nicole is a New York City-based broadcaster and serial entrepreneur who is one of only 2 black female CEOs in the whiskey business. And she's joining me on the podcast to talk about her newly launched premium spirits brand, Frisky Whiskey. Nicole, how are you?
Hi, Joe. I'm good. How are you?
I'm excellent. And so it's funny. I was just talking to Scottie Pippen, the former Bulls great, about his brand new bourbon, Digits, and he was talking about the struggles of getting on the shelves. And I know that you've got a history in the spirits game. So talk to me about this thing that most people don't realize. People take for granted. They walk into their favorite spirits shop, they see something on the shelves, and they grab it and then go. They don't realize that there's a lot of politics and bureaucracy in what happens on those shelves. So talk to me about what you know about that and how it's playing out now with Frisky Whiskey.
I mean, the politics don't even begin to describe what it is. It's like politics, it's like surgery, it's like rocket science. No, seriously, it's very much a painstaking process. So you decide you have an amazing idea for a brand. Once you get past all the trillions of hurdles that it takes from idea to concept development to getting a liquid in a bottle, whatever that is, whether it's whiskey, whether it's vodka, whatever it is, wine. Once you get over all of those hurdles, the process of getting that product that's now been bottled and approved there's several approval processes to get the approval to even actually manufacture this product. Once you get past that, now you want to sell it. How do you get it on liquor shelves? You have to do everything from get the right to distribute that product in various states. Every state has its own process, which is different. It's not like, some nationwide thing where once you're in here, you're in everywhere. That's not the case. So you need to get the approval and the distribution rights in various states, wherever you decide you want to have your product. And here's a myth. People would think that, you're coming out, you're going to be in every state. Not true. You would, first of all, narrow down that process for various reasons, what your product is, where you think it's going to do best in terms of the consumer. Every state, every city has a different drinking profile. So it's almost like fashion in the sense that, it would be great if you had a clothing line that appealed to everyone, but realistically, you want to find your target audience and you want to hit them where they live. So then you need the approval to distribute in that market. You need a distributor in that market, somebody who's going to be able to take that product, because you yourself, the owner of a brand, whether you're Scottie Pippen, whether you're me, whoever you are, you don't walk that product into a liquor store or into a restaurant or into a bar or a pub or a nightclub. A distributor does that. So you have to get distribution. You would think, I have a great product. The distributor is going to want me. Not necessarily. You have to make yourself viable to a distributor. It's almost like, is the egg before the chicken or is the chicken before the egg? Because if you don't have distribution, how are you proving yourself that you're viable, right? So there's all of these little nuances and intricacies and things that have to happen for you to even get distribution, somebody to take you on. Once you have a distributor, you think, great. So you have distribution. Now I'm going to be everywhere. It's another no. You're not going to be everywhere just because you have a distributor. There's all these tricks and hacks and secrets that people in the industry know and people who aren't in the industry don't know. So if you're a first timer in the business, you're kind of already at a deficit. In my particular situation, luckily, I have a team of people who are working with me, and I have partners on this project who have been in the business for decades and who understand all of these nuances and these things and how to get a distributor to even take you on. And then once they take you on, how to get them to do the work, because they're essentially a salesperson. So you would think, make money off of my product, but no, they have other products that already sell themselves. So if you're a newcomer, how are you basically keeping them motivated to sell your product, to go out and get liquor stores to want to put you on their shelves? or bars to have you featured on their bar, or let alone on their bar menu, where now their customers are like, oh, so instead of having Scotty, for example, is in the bourbon business. So we just came out of the Derby season. So when you go to the bar, oh, I can just have his bourbon in my mint julep. Well, there's a million other bourbons on the bar. So what's making the bartender push that product? That has something to do with who distributed your product to that bar. So it's actually a very, very arduous process, and it is not an easy one.
So I guess my follow-up question would be, then why are you doing this to yourself, Nicole? You have a lot of skills. You're very successful in a lot of different things. Why are you putting yourself through this?
Well, thank you for the kudos on my successes in other businesses. You know what? The truth is, there's that phrase like, find a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life. That is total BS. Obviously, it's called a job for a reason. It's work, right? So if you do what you love, then you don't mind busting your ass. And for me, it's really a love of feeling like I'm trailblazing. Like at the end of the day, I'm the second Black woman to be the CEO of a whiskey company. So I remind myself every time I'm aggravated by something that I'm kind of not just doing this for me. I'm doing this for a culture. I'm doing this for my culture. I'm doing this for people who look like me, for women to feel as though we can have a place here, but also for the consumer. What my product is it's very different from any other whiskey on the market, flavored or unflavored in many ways. And so I feel like there's a drinker out there who wants this product, and I want to get it to them. I want them to be able to have it, and I want to represent both from a brand perspective and from an owner perspective, something that isn't already there. So that's why I'm putting myself through this torture. No, I also don't find it to be torture, because another adage that always rings true for me is nothing good comes easy. If it's what's easy, nothing good. So I don't mind the hard work. I just want to accomplish the goal.
And you mentioned the fact you're only the second Black female as a CEO of a whiskey business. I mean, I guess it's a bigger question to a bigger problem, but why? Is it all the aforementioned issues? Why do you think you are only the second to blaze this trail?
I mean, it's all of the aforementioned issues. It's to be honest, it's a financial issue. Like any business, I've started and been involved in and done and currently even have other businesses. But at the end of the day, it's not starting a liquor business is not something that you can't one woman show this, or one man show this, or one any gender show this. You need backing. You need a team. You need financial support. You need industry support. You need boots on the ground. And the honest truth is, like many other businesses, but specifically whiskey has been a man's world, and a white man's world forever. So breaking ground is not easy in any industry, but you take something like this that's been completely closed off this entire time, and it's very difficult. The,
Hmm.
the difficulty in breaking in is something that clearly would be, an obstacle for other women, and for other women of color specifically. But also, I think that for women of color, when you decide, or if you have aspirations of entrepreneurship, most people tend to gravitate towards areas where it isn't so unheard of, because we're already, we're already starting from further back, let's say,
Hmm.
than a white female entrepreneur. We're already at, I used the term deficit before, but we're already at a deficit just by nature of being a Black woman. So you said before, why are you putting yourself through this torture? I think a lot of people would ask themselves, why would I even bother with that? And if they have the goal or the dream or the aspiration of doing so, you do get a lot of doors kind of shut in your face, especially if you don't have that team, that support system around you, which, I feel fortunate that I have that, but a lot of people don't have that. You need a hand up in the liquor industry. It's not about a hand out, it's about a hand up. And so without a hand up, and without the team, and without the people around you to help you get there, it just will not happen, and it just has not happened before this.
And so, what is it about being an entrepreneur that attracts you? Because again, going back to to my joke earlier, there's a lot of other things you can do other than becoming an entrepreneur and running businesses, and then running an incredibly competitive spirits business. But what is it about entrepreneurship that attracts you so much?
Firstly, I think that for me, entrepreneurship is really born out of professional multitasking. Like, I'm somebody who I consider myself a blessed person in that I think I have various skills and talents that I know I have them because I've been able to monetize them. And so to me, it's like, if you know how to do something, it kind of goes back to that adage before. If you're doing things that you love and you have an outlet to earn from doing those things, and then you have the nerve to say, okay, I'm going to only do those things. I'm not going to necessarily rely on any other income sources that come from, a traditional 9 to 5 or a traditional any, work situation or scenario. Then you're kind of already an entrepreneur. Like, independent contracting is entrepreneurship. And so if you're somebody who, a lot of people use the term freelancer. I never thought of myself as a freelancer. I don't like the free part of that word in general, but I never thought of myself as a freelancer because I didn't just like, take on this job and take on that job. What I've always done is I've always zeroed in on things that I know how to do and then put them to work for me. And then in some situations, I'm able to then maybe bring on someone else, an employee, an assistant, an associate, a worker. So it's entrepreneurship. Working for yourself is entrepreneurship. And so if you're able to then build that out, you can, for me personally, I would rather be the boss of me. I'd be the boss of my own talent and be able to. You feel like for me personally, I feel like I benefit more from the fruits of my labor, whether it's financial or emotional, when I'm the person who I'm reporting to at the end of the day. So that's what has always driven me to pursue businesses where I'm running the business or I'm a decision maker in the business, because I don't feel like I'm at my best when I have too many other people. Let me see how I can say this without sounding completely full of myself. Um, I feel like I thrive best when I answer mostly to myself. And I it's just a personal thing. Like, I saw this quote from Elon Musk where he said something like, we normalize working, 50 hours a week for someone else, but, you know, do a couple jobs and where you're the boss and you're insane. Like, I'm paraphrasing what he said, but it's like, to me, it's always just made more sense to be my own business person rather than do a lot of business. Like, and I've worked for other people many times in my life. Obviously, I've had a lot of jobs. I started my first job I was 14 years old. So obviously I was not a 14-year-old entrepreneur. I worked for other people many times, but the older I got, the more I just felt like, okay, when you work for other people, you are essentially boosting their business, and hopefully you can, move yourself forward as well. But if you want to run the show, you got to run the show. And that's just the kind of person I am. I'm a showgirl in that way.
I got you. And you mentioned you like being a boss, and you also alluded to earlier about the fact that the importance of a team. So
Mhm.
how is it, when the shoe's on the other foot, when now you're the boss and you have to surround people, like you want Nicole Youngs, I'm assuming you want people who have your competitive spirit to succeed. How do you find them?
Well, here's the thing. Firstly, I don't want Nicole
Oh,
Young's
okay.
because Nicole Young is sometimes nuts. No, the truth is, I think they say there's no I in team. So a bunch of me's, a bunch of Nicole's would not really make an effective team, I don't think. I do want people who share my drive and passion for what I do, and also people who I consider myself a quick thinker on my feet. Like, a lot of people are very by the book, and you do need some by the book people on your team, because that sometimes, kind of tweaks your structure. If you have somebody who's like very, you know, by the book, whatever that book is. But I like people who are quick thinkers on their feet, who can work with what they have, who, we might have had a conversation yesterday where we're going to do exactly this, but then today we have to kind of switch gears and do it a little differently. And I need people who, can shuffle in that way. It's almost like I think of it as a very New York mentality too. Like as being, being a New Yorker, every single minute of every day is different here. We rely on, subway systems and ride shares and all these things that are just ever changing. So that's just kind of how I work sometimes. Like even though we might have a plan laid out, plans change, and I like to find people who are okay with that change and who can run with that change and still accomplish the goal, even though the exact plan may not have been able to be executed. So that's
Hmm.
what I'm looking for. But a team is everything.
And so let's talk about the actual product, whiskey, and
Yes.
Frisky Whiskey in particular. We talked about the troubles of the spirits industry and how tough it is to crack that. But whiskey. Now, I've never been a brown spirits drinker like bourbon, whiskey, or even dark rum. I've always been I think it's because I'm a lightweight, so I don't think I'm afraid to. I think it's too. I just don't think I'm a man enough to handle whiskey. But from what I understand, whiskey is growing amongst female liquor drinkers. Correct me if I'm wrong, but are you seeing? Is that one of the reasons why Frisky Whiskey exists, because of this ever-growing, expanding market of women that are interested in whiskey?
Well, the thing about Frisky is that flavored whiskey is one of the fastest growing markets within the whiskey market. So right now, flavored whiskey is outselling rye, it's outselling scotch. It is very, very popular amongst drinkers in general and whiskey drinkers in general. But then when you start talking about the female whiskey drinker, that audience has also grown immensely over the past few years. And so a drink like Frisky is meant, of course, to appeal to a female audience, but we're not a female specific whiskey. What we are is flavor, flair, and fun in every sip. It's a premium whiskey with style and whimsy. So any cocktail drinker who enjoys great flavor, great taste, whether or not they have ever thought of themselves as a whiskey drinker, someone like you who's like, to be honest, I was not a big whiskey drinker before I got involved in this leg of the business. So for someone like you who's like, you know what, I'm a lightweight, Frisky is an ultra, ultra smooth spirit. So when you pour this over ice, it's okay to be a lightweight because you are meant to sip this. You might just only need your one little glass that you're sipping on it over ice. It's not something that you feel like, oh, I can't drink three of those, because you don't even want to. You don't
Right.
even need to. It's so relaxing and so palatable and so delicate really in its flavor that it really, I would love to hear what you think of it if and when you do try it. But I really feel as though what we're trying to do is appeal to every cocktail drinker. And so if you are a lover of mixed drinks, Frisky is going to play well in a lot of the drinks you already like, but you're also going to enjoy it on the rocks as just this really smooth, light, but decadent flavored spirit. If you're a whiskey aficionado, I have had people who, drink single malt whiskeys and who are just so incredibly picky and discerning with their whiskey taste. And they think it's almost like just a fun departure. Like, oh my goodness, I never thought I could drink flavored whiskey. So whatever you thought you could never drink, you'll be so surprised when you try Frisky that you actually love this.
All right, I'll give it a try. It's funny, as a card-carrying member of Generation X, I've seen the evolution in many of these wine and spirits verticals. One, I remember speaking to a bunch of people who run vineyards, is wine. When I
Mhm.
was a kid, wine was meant to be drunk at the end of dinner by wealthy adults. And then in the 80s and 90s, you started seeing this proliferation of people just like drinking wine at parties, bringing wine, having wine at restaurants, having wine whenever they want, wine
Mhm.
o'clock as it's become. And
Right.
s- and I don't know, you're probably too young to remember those days, Nicole, but when wine was like that. But now I feel like a lot of these spirits, like whiskey, to me, it was like, oh, that's that old guy drink. The guy's sipping that one little glass, like, I forgot what they're called. What's that little glass that you drink
Little,
whiskey in?
little, little sifter, little
Little
sifter.
sifters. So so that's the mental picture I have of a whiskey drinker, but it sounds like that is no longer the case.
Listen, I'm going to put Fat Joe's spin on it. Yesterday's whiskey is not today's whiskey, and yesterday's whiskey drinker is not today's whiskey drinker. So Nowadays, you have people from all demographics, walks of life. That Mad Men imagery of the men sitting around with their whiskey. That is very much still, of course, in existence. But you also have really, stylish women. You have fun crowds, people, the dinner party crowd now, all genders. Everybody's enjoying. There is really a whiskey out there, or at least the market is trying to expand into a place where there can be a whiskey for every drinker. And that's definitely what we at Frisky are striving to be. And so far, we've gotten such great response from all different types of whiskey drinkers that I know I'm right about this, and you're right about how all of these drinks eventually, they seem to evolve into more inclusive types of spirits, and whiskey's definitely on that track, and we're doing our part to make sure that that happens.
And currently, I'm in Charleston. You're back in my hometown of New York. And Frisky Whiskey is produced here in Charleston. So I guess I'll start with why? Why Charleston? I didn't know that they made whiskey down here. So what's that all about?
Yes. Well, Charleston is our home base where Frisky is produced and distilled. Well, mainly because my partner is down there. He has a company called New Wellington Brands, New Wellington Beverages. They are based in Charleston, and several of his brands are distilled and produced down in Charleston. And it works very well. We feel like we have the perfect blend of that Southern charm and that New York glitz. That's a part of what our brand is all about. But the main reason why we started in Charleston is because that is where my partner and his business are based.
Hmm. And what is it about? And what do you think that brings to the table in terms of having like this southern sort of vibe infused into it? Because I feel like it has a very, from the description of it, it does sound like you said, it's like a southern drink with New York flair, and that seems totally intentional.
It is intentional. I think that having that sort of there is very much I think there's very much an ease and a lightheartedness, if you will, a whimsy about Charleston and about the South in general. And I think that that flair and that flavor and that style is the New York side of it. So when you blend those two together, that's sort of like the identity of our brand, but that makes it sort of both ends of this of the sword, so to speak, as far as who we're looking to appeal to, as well as everyone in between.
And so this is not your first liquor rodeo, Nicole. Prior to this, you also worked on a liqueur brand, correct?
Yes, I did work previously many years ago on the spirit brand Hypnotic. It was a liqueur. My current partner, James Landis, was a co-founder of that company, and he and I worked very closely together on that brand along with his other partner. And it was a great, great product. And that was truly an innovative product. It was a blue liqueur. It was the first of its kind in terms of color, in terms of flavor. It was so well received by so many different types of consumers, and the product did extremely well. They ended up selling to Heaven Hill Distilleries, and I continued actually after that working on several other projects with my current partner, which ultimately led us down the Frisky path. So this is not my first foray into the spirits world, but it is my first time in a position of ownership.
And what did you learn from your time with Hypnotic that you think has helped you along the way here? Because as the aforementioned struggles, I'm sure you saw a lot of that coming down your path when you signed up to work on Frisky Whiskey. But what did you learn along the way when you were in your time with Hypnotic?
What I learned is that nothing stays the same. No, back it was a very different time back then, just in terms of a lot of things, things like how you did your outreach for example with a brand, how you even things like back then you were able to just kind of like get your product once you were on shelves, once you had the distribution. The marketing strategies were very different back then compared to how they are now. So what I took away from back then was that if you have a product that tastes really good, you can truly break barriers and dispel myths, because that product was blue. Okay.
Mhm.
So you had people wondering, is the bottle blue or is the liquid blue? What's making it blue? are my insides going to be blue after I drink that? Like there was so much curiosity around what it was, but the minute they tasted the actual liqueur, it was game on. Like people just loved the flavor. They loved how well it played in cocktails, but that you could kind of sip it on its own as its own little, delicacy, if you will, in terms of liqueurs. And there were a lot of misconceptions about it because it was blue, because it was, a liqueur, like, oh, this is some sweet little afterthought. Nobody would ever take this thing seriously. So now with a flavored whiskey, there are a lot of, questions about, well, you hear caramel and vanilla. Is it super sweet? Am I going to like it? Am I not going to, there's a lot of preconceived notions that come with the product. And I realize that what you have to do is you have to get them to taste it. Once they taste it, they'll get it.
Hmm.
So that's one of the biggest lessons I took from that product over to this product.
And you do make it sound like you're talking about the 1930s. This was, I think 2001 was when Hypnotic came out. So don't make it seem like it was that long ago.
Back in the Stone Ages, Joe, it was so different.
Oh my God! Before there wasn't an iPhone. Can you imagine?
But you know what? 2001, we were in 2022. So 2 decades ago, it's not that long ago, but it feels like.
So you were like 11 years old when you were working on Hypnotic?
Listen, I had working papers, but I wasn't legal, so we just fudged around it.
And so, lastly, about Frisky Whiskey. I guess, I mean, I hate to do this like when they have, rock and roll bands come into a radio studio, they ask them like, where'd you get the name from? And usually the answer is always terrible. But I have to ask, Frisky Whiskey, why is it called that?
It's called Frisky Whiskey because when I think about the word frisky, when I think about frisky, the first thing I think about is fun. It's like we all have that frisky friend, right? She's like, or he, they're like a little bit, they like to have a good time. They might be a little naughty, but they don't go too crazy, but they're definitely fun. And there's something that always makes that person the exciting one in the group, the frisky friend. So this was meant to be that vibe. Like it's fun, it's flavorful, it's a little like, you're like, what do you mean frisky? And then you have to try it and you'll see how much you like it. Like it's just a name that piques interest, but that alludes to fun. And that's what we wanted to accomplish with the drink.
Yeah, I mean, and plus I'm a sucker for a good rhyme, so I think I'm shocked that name didn't exist. Was it one of those that maybe it existed over years and then like the copyright wore off or something like that? Because that seems like such an obvious name for a whiskey.
There are other businesses with that name. I
Sure.
think somewhere there might be a liquor store called like Frisky or Frisky Whiskey Store, but there's never been a spirit to own that name.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's funny. I always tell people when it comes to titling things, when you come up with a title that sounds like it's already existed, that's the key to a really good title of something.
Exactly. Is when you think you heard of it before, but actually this is the first time. Yeah.
That's awesome. So what's the future of Frisky Whiskey? I know we talked about the struggles of obviously getting it on more shelves, but what's the prize? Keeping your eye on the prize. What is the and I hate to say the word something like an end game, but like what does the future of Frisky Whiskey look like?
Well, there's definitely no end game
No.
because we want to be here for a very long time. But our plans are to expand ultimately nationwide. That term is with an asterisk because selling liquor nationwide does not mean to every single state. But to be able to have our product on shelves everywhere and to have as many people loving and enjoying a flavorful sip as possible.
And so far, what's the at the end of the day, it's all about selling bottles. So how's it been going? How has the whiskey community responded to Frisky Whiskey?
The whiskey community has responded extremely positively. We are the highest rated flavored whiskey ever. Frisky is the first and only flavored whiskey to ever score 95 at the Ultimate Spirits Championship. So we are also Chairman's Trophy winners of that competition. So the community has responded tremendously. The consumers are loving the product. We have not had anybody to give us a negative review or negative feedback. We have launched officially. We launched officially in February, and we're currently in New York, New Jersey, South Carolina, California, Texas, and we have Georgia and Florida following close behind. So we're off to a great, great start. We're very happy with how we have kicked off the brand and with where we see ourselves going in the
And,
future.
and like any kind of liquor brand, I'm sure the future looks like there'll be different varietals of Frisky Whiskey, right? Is that not too crazy to think that's coming in the near future?
At this point, we're really excited about our current flavor because, as I said, we are the highest rated flavored whiskey, and we are committed to our concept of leaning into whiskey's naturally occurring notes of caramel and vanilla. So when you think about other flavored whiskeys, a lot of people skew fruity or they skew, more on the sort of like dessert type, and that's not what we're trying to do.
Mm.
So as far as expanding beyond this flavor profile, we'll have to wait and see.
All right. Well, since I am in South Carolina where it is available, I'm going to find myself a bottle of Frisky Whiskey, and I'm going to. I guess I got to buy one of those small glasses. I don't think I own one of them. And then, so for as we close, for the uninitiated who has never drank whiskey before or drank it regularly, what's my introduction to Frisky Whiskey? How would you suggest I drink that very first sip of Frisky Whiskey?
Your very first sip of Frisky should be enjoyed just very simply over ice. If you could get yourself several ice cubes or one of those nice big chunky ice cubes, pour yourself a little bit over ice, give it a swirl, give it a sniff as well, because once you get that aroma, it's such a beautiful scent that you get just like right off the top, and then take a nice slow sip and see what you think. I guarantee you will like it. The other thing I would suggest is once you've tried it on its own over ice, we have some really, really beautiful and consumer friendly signature cocktails on our website, drinkfrisky.com. They're not made with any over the top ridiculous ingredients that you can't get at your local grocery store. Mix up a cocktail, share it with friends.
Oh, great. So I don't have to get like an exotic pineapple or something to make the drink.
You don't have to get a plane ticket to get the fruit that you're not allowed to fly back with to make any of our cocktails.
Awesome.
Everything is user friendly.
Excellent. Her name is Nicole Young. She is the CEO of Frisky Whiskey. Nicole, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed the time as well.
Thanks so much for having me. I sure did.
And that'll do it for another episode of the Forbes Books Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please make sure you take a second to subscribe so you automatically get my new shows when they drop. Also, if you have a minute, I would love if you left us a review so more amazing entrepreneurs like yourself can discover the show. And please don't forget the golden rule and treat others as you want to be treated. Thanks for listening. Until next time, adios.